Hello and welcome to another week with Spinnio Stories here. I am so excited to have Mateo on. Mateo Suarez Stewart is with Ebombo, and I've known him now for a little over 6 months probably, and just have followed. We've had multiple conversations. I love following your startup. So one of the things that I think I was really impressed with you was just how you really nailed the outbound marketing for growth. So I think today, want to welcome you. Let's just get started, Mateo. I want to welcome you, but I just want to let everyone know we're going to dive in. I love that you've mentioned beforehand you're eager to go in there and really give some insights into how you did this. So for other startups, other companies looking to really accelerate their growth, I know there's going to be some interesting insights. So stick around, say hi, and let's welcome you first, Mateo. Thanks so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me, Dustin. Pleasure to be here today with you. As you mentioned, we met about 6 months ago in Santa Monica. What a place, by the way! What a place. So yeah, I mean, very excited to be here with you, and yeah, excited to talk about my journey, what like how we got here, plans for the future, mistakes that we've been able to, I mean, that we have done in the past. So yeah, again, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm all ears. I'm open to listening to or answering all the questions you may have.
I love it. I'm sure. And one of the things that I think that I find with a couple of startups. I do work out of the dojo. We're in the dojo, expert dojo studios here today. I'm spoiled that I get to talk to a lot of different startups. But one of the ones that I noticed, the people who really are the difference makers like you that come through the dojo are ones who cultivate great investor relations as well. So I wanted to, I'm sure we'll dive into that and maybe pick your brain a little bit on just what are some of the things you thought worked along those fronts. So lots of good stuff I know we're going to be able to cover. But let's get started. Maybe give me just give us all a little background on kind of how you started Ebombo and what your journey has been like.
Yes, well,
Where, yeah,
yes,
let's
well.
dive right in.
First of all, shout out to the dojo. Those guys are just amazing. I don't know where Ebombo would be without them. So shout out to Brian, Isabel, Jonathan, all the crew. It's been amazing. What a ride, and I'm really excited to continue to build with those guys in the future. So I'll tell you a little bit more about them during this conversation. But yeah, I mean, so how we started? Well, my name is Mateo Suarez. I am the CEO and co-founder of Ebombo. I'm 27 years old, and it's been a very crazy ride. It's been a ride with ups and downs. But yes, I mean, we started this company actually with a whole different idea. We needed to pivot because the company was gonna die. Like that the idea itself actually, I mean, the company itself, sorry, actually started around 2019, 2020, more or less. So but that when I mean those first 2 years we were doing a totally different thing that we were doing today. We were working in another, I mean, we were working part-time. It was like it was not fully focused, but we had the dream to build a company and scale a company and basically grow a company. So yes, I mean, it was 2019, 2020. We were doing different things with esports, video games, um, things that have nothing to do at all with what we're doing today. I'm gonna explain in a few minutes what we do and what we offer and what is our product and what are our services. So yeah, I mean, it was like 2020. It was 2020, middle of the pandemic. We were about to die, to like literally go bankrupt, and we needed to make a pivot. So in 2020 we were offering esports tournaments, for just like final end users. So we created a platform that allow people to play video tournaments of video games. Okay, so we were offering tournaments of Fortnite, Call of Duty, FIFA, PES, Warzone, Dota, League of Legends, different type of video games, Clash Royale. But we got like 50,000 registered users, something like that. But we were making $0 in revenue, like no revenue at all. So it was just kind of like, hey, what do we do? And we were about to die. And one day we were speaking we were speaking with I mean, between the co-founders, Gonzalo, Santiago, and I, that they're my other two co-founders. And we came up with the idea of like, hey, why don't we just offer like a video game tournaments to companies?
Yep.
People I mean, it was lockdown back then. And we came up with the idea like, hey, why don't we offer this? And I remember we started knocking on some doors. And I had a very close friend of mine, which actually he's kind of like my best friend. That he was selling to HR areas. Okay, he was in another company, but he was selling to HR areas, and he is my best friend. So I was speaking to him, and I asked him like, hey, do you think this makes sense? Do you think that somebody would be interested in buying like an
Yeah, like
esports tournament that he can offer it to different type of like for their workers? And he told me, yeah, I think it could work. I have some contacts, so I'll try to help you out with an intro. So he literally helped me out with an intro. And yeah, we closed our first customer. That was fast. Like I remember that the first 2 years we made literally $0 in revenue, and in a week we closed like a $3,000 deal. And we're like, wow. And I remember that first deal we closed, we felt like millionaires. Because
of
we were
course.
making $0 in revenue, and boom, we were like, okay, we are making money. Like all of a
We have a
sudden we're making
business.
money. We've just closed a $3,000 deal. Wow, this is awesome. So yeah, that's how we got there. But I mean, obviously, once we offered that, we thought like, hey, okay, this is cool, but it's not scalable, because like, I mean, you cannot build a company based on esports tournaments for employees. So we started to dig in a little bit into the market, the HR market. I mean, something that we did really, really well was that we identified that our buyer persona was an HR guy or an HR female.
Yeah.
So um, we realized that, and we said like, hey, this is great, but we need to start creating more products. We need to start creating more. I mean, we need to basically start offering more products to possible customers. So we started kind of like as an esports like tournament for employees. But right now, what I mean, we started offering like hybrid events, virtual events, vacations, like software, employee information. So we started offering kind of like this kind of like a one-stop shop for HR managers, and creating different products for HR managers. And that's how we got here. So uh, 2021 was kind of like the first official year doing that. That year we did 450K in revenue. 2022 we did almost $1 million in revenue. And 2022, sorry, I'm gonna go again. 2021, 450K in revenue.
Yep.
2022, almost $1 million in revenue. 2023, almost $2 million in revenue. So those have been kind of like the first 3 years doing this and selling to HR areas. So last year, yeah, we hit 2 million, almost 2 million revenue. This year we're targeting to make around somewhere around 3 and 4. Hopefully we can get that. We can get there. And but if we get there, I think that we're gonna have something very, very, very beautiful in our hands. And I think that we're gonna be in Series A levels. Hopefully. I don't know if you want to raise a Series A, but at least we're gonna be in that level. So yeah,
I
that's a
was
little
I was
bit.
going to ask you about the Series A. Like, what's the next funding step if you're interested? And do you think are your operations likely to be profitable at that point? Like, can you just
Yes.
run it without funding? I thought I remember you could.
Yes, I mean, we're not that far from being a profitable company. I mean, we're actually, I would say that we're pretty close. We have a very, very solid runway. So yes. I mean, for us, like, I think that we're kind of like in the middle, because I think you have right now two type of entrepreneurs. You have entrepreneurs that are like all about fundraising, and hey, we want to raise like $10 million and 15 and 50, and we want to raise Series B, Series C, Series D. And you have the other side of the coin, that are kind of like the bootstrap entrepreneurs, that are guys that basically say like, hey, there's no way on earth we're raising a single dollar from investors. We're just gonna like we're gonna be in charge of the whole thing. We're gonna grow a little bit slower, but we're gonna get there, you know. So I think that I would say that we're a little bit in the middle because like I mean, I'm okay with raising funds, but I am not okay with like growing and burning cash and it's a mess and you're growing and you cannot sleep because you're gonna have like in like your company's gonna die in 3 months, but you're growing like 300% year over year. You know, like for me that doesn't make any sense. So I mean, I've been there in the past. You know, I've been there in the position where I have like a 3 4 month runway and I'm like driving myself crazy. So I just prefer to. I mean, if I have to grow a little bit slower, but I can guarantee myself that I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna have a company that is making $4 or $5 million in revenue, and the year after that, I can be at 7 8 10 $9 million in revenue. Then it's game on. You know, I know it sounds easy. I mean, I'm speaking through this, and you probably think like, hey, this guy thinks that getting to $5 6 million in revenue is so easy. No, the reality is that it's extremely hard. You know, it's like you need to put a lot of grind. You need to work like 24/7, 7 days a week, you know. So it's kind of like a roller coaster of emotion. So yes, I mean, it's not that we have decided like, hey, I'm gonna raise an A round in the next 10 months. For now, my focus right now is get to that number in revenue. And if we get to that number in revenue, I'm gonna have a conversation with our investors, and we're gonna like bounce ideas around the revenue that we have, and we're gonna say like, hey, should we go for an A? Should we just keep growing, or what should we do? You know, I mean, I know that we
And the
have some.
market,
Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say, and the market just changes so much. Like raising a
Yes,
Series A is so different now than even 2 years ago. That like
yes,
you got to kind of you can't assume that the conditions will be the same in 2 years or a year when you're ready. So I did see that Cesar left a comment there, so I wanted to
yes.
welcome him there. It's kind of fun, very cool. I assume he's a connection of yours.
Yes, yes, yes. He's a very close friend of mine. Actually, I'm his customer, so he's actually he's a very close friend of mine from way back.
Love
But
it.
actually, I'm hiring one of the services that he's offering in one of his companies because Cesar is a serial entrepreneur and he's a great guy.
Love it, love it. So I one of the things I kind of I think I mentioned early on is that we do get a lot of the dojo startups that I work with and talk with, and one of the things that people often struggle with is their marketing and sales tech stacks. Like, what are they? Where did you start? I'd be curious to hear what does it kind of look like for you today. What tools are you using between CRMs, between contact databases, between email outreach, whatever it is, calendar tools. Like, what have you found as a tech stack that's working for you to get this 100% growth year over year? Like,
Yes.
can you give me a little background of what you're doing?
Well, yes, actually, that's a pretty interesting question, and I would say an important question. Our tech stack, it's kind of, I mean, by tech stack, I'm referring to like softwares that we hire, right? I'm not speaking about like our software engineers. But we use different type of softwares. Like we first, I know you're a big fan of HubSpot, but the first thing that we use is HubSpot. It's kind of like the base of everything. It's that literally where we have all our sales information, customer database, a lot of things that we register, take notes of the meetings that we have. I mean, let's say I jump into a meeting. And I'm speaking with a possible customer. All the notes that I am writing, I'm taking those notes in HubSpot. So that's the first software. The second software, it's a software that it's called Apollo.io. That I would say that if you're in B2B sales, you probably know it. It's not like a rocket science. Like it's basically a software that can help you out sending B2B campaigns in a massive way, and it can give you the email of the buyer persona that you're trying to sell to. That's the second one, Apollo.io. Reply, that's also a very similar to Apollo, but the open rate of the campaigns that you send through Reply are a little bit higher than Apollo. So I mean, they're a competition, but we play with both tools at the same time. We also use, I mean, we have been able to use also other tools, like for example Hunter.io and Evabot, that are basically softwares that allows you to scrape data of LinkedIn, and you can get emails. And I mean, by having those emails, then you can, I mean, let's say that I enter into, let's say, EvaBot. I'm gonna enter. It's gonna be a robot that they're gonna scrape the data of like my LinkedIn buyer personas. I'm gonna scrape all the data out of LinkedIn. After that, after I scrape all of that data, I'm gonna upload it into an Apollo or an email verifier to see if actually the email exists. And once I validate that, I start sending emails, and we start sending emails. So that's a little bit about the process we have. There are also another kind of like LinkedIn automation tools where you can be sending like 100 connections per day. I mean, there are tools like, for example, Dripify, that basically help you out with that. So yes, I mean, there are a lot of tools out there that can help you out, like to get like a decent amount of leads. Actually, a very interesting model that we're seeing a lot in Latam right now, and actually, it's a company that it's a company from Cesar, that he's the guy that comment in this live.
Yep.
They're like, I mean, probably you've heard about this model about staff augmentation, that basically you need developers, and there's going to be a company that is going to place, let's say, two developers, okay, to your company for a specific project. So in Latam right now, because like it's much more cheaper than the US, there are a lot of SDRs, staff augmentation companies. So
Yep.
these are folks that are great guys, like generating leads, in I mean, are experts in generating B2B leads. So basically you can pay them an amount, and they can get you, I don't know, let's say 5 meetings per week at a very decent price, you know. So I mean, that's a service I'm hiring right now, because one of the things that I do is I always try to try new things, you know. Like I always try to do that. I remember that when I first arrived to Mexico, because I am from Peru, and when I moved to Mexico like 3 4 years ago, I remember I hired two agencies that were kind of like SDRs, staff augmentation, you know. So I hired the two of them, and I told them, compete, go,
Yep.
and the one that gets me the most leads is gonna stay with me, you know. So I did that for the first like 3 4 months, and it was a pretty cool experiment, you know. I remember we actually, I think we got our first sales out of that. So and that was a very important thing to validate the Mexican market, and today Mexico is a key market for us, you know.
Completely. And now I remember, and I happen to know a little bit there. So you're looking to grow in other markets right now. Like my understanding is Spain is probably your next big market, right?
Yes, I mean, we're just testing, you know. We're testing different type of markets. Like we're just seeing like what could work, what could not work. But we're doing some small campaigns in the U.S. and Spain. It's not that I'm not telling like, hey, tomorrow I'm gonna be in those countries. We're just testing those two markets to see how it goes, and if it goes well, and if we see that there's kind of like a certain type of demand for these markets, then we're in, you know. I mean, I think it I think it's probably very very hard to launch those two markets at the same time, like the US and Spain. But I mean, if we, let's say that we run campaigns through Apollo, Reply, or Dripify, or BDF Ventures, that it's one of our elite investor, I would say, and we see that, I don't know, the US is performing way better than Spain, or the opposite, Spain is performing way better than the US, then we're just going to stay with one country, try to launch that country, create a market in that country for us, and maybe 2 years we can launch our fourth country, because right now we have operations, in-person operations or physical operations in Mexico and Peru.
Very cool. So speaking of investors, this is one of the spots that I think you really shine at, which is, developing these relationships with key investors. Who would you say are some of the key investors in Ebombo? And then what insights can you give for other startup founders if they're looking to also, develop good relationships with investors?
Yes, so yes, I mean, first of all, like I think that we've been able to I mean, thanks God that we have been able to close with very like great investors and great people and very smart people. I would say that, I mean, we have a lot of investors, but I would mention some of them that have been like very very important from us down the road. Like for example, BDF Ventures. These guys are like a VC that only invests in B2B companies. I would say that their primary focus is in the US and LATAM. I don't know if they're already investing in Asia, but well, to tell you the story about these guys, BDF Ventures is a VC firm that was created by some guys in Argentina. That the guys are geniuses, by the way, but they created actually an staff augmentation company, but of developers and software developers. Okay, so they created this company like 15 years ago, and basically they realized that, hey, like literally the most amount of leads that we can generate, the more sales we're gonna generate. It's just like it's a numbers game. B2B sales, it's a numbers game. Obviously, like you can tell, like, hey, like we can do like product led growth and all that type of stuff and those strategies, but it's all about, literally, it's all about the number of meetings you're getting at the end of the day. So I mean, if you can find a way that people pay for your product without having like any contact, then good for you,
Bless your heart. Yeah.
I mean, but for the rest of us mortals, like we need some sales reps in our team to help us close. So these guys realized that 15 years ago, it's a numbers game. The more meetings we generate, the more sales we generate. So they created an algorithm, like an in-house algorithm that allowed them to generate B2B leads in an automated, scalable, and fast way. So they created this algorithm, and the algorithm just went to the literally it went up. It went to the moon, and these guys were generating like millions of dollars in revenue with this algorithm. That, by the way, you cannot find this algorithm, you cannot hire this algorithm. It's just something that it's in-house, and they are not planning to put it to give it to the public. So
Hmm.
I like what the years went by. They were in, I don't know, year 12 of the company. They were generating a lot of $1 million in revenue, and they said to themselves, like, hey, we are making lots of profits, and we have this cool algorithm. We are B2B experts. Probably we're one of the ones that best knows how this B2B field works. So they decided to came with the brilliant idea of creating a VC firm that came up with a concept of, you go ahead, you get to pitch them your idea, what you do, your vision, everything about the company, your team, numbers, and what they tell you is, hey, we like the idea. We're gonna give you our algorithm for free for 2 months. Okay, for we're not gonna charge you nothing, not even $1. We're just gonna give you
Yep.
this algorithm, and if you can demonstrate us that our algorithm can get you X amount of meetings in X amount of time, and you can convert those meetings into sales, we invest in you. And it's
I
just kind.
I love that model, by the way. I mean, you mentioned it. Brian here's talked about it. The BDev guys have figured it out. Like
Yes,
it's
I
such
mean, like it's,
fascinating.
and I mean, there's no like tricks around, or any. Sorry for the bad word, but there's no any bullshit, like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit with you and I'm gonna tell you I'm gonna be the next unicorn, and I'm gonna be like the best B2B company on the planet, and I'm just gonna be, I don't know, I'm just gonna be like we're gonna be a massive company, generate like hundreds of $1 million in revenues. Like, okay, if you can tell me that, show me. But I'm going to give you an algorithm that, I mean, it's very very powerful, and we know it's very very powerful. So you have 2 months, to demonstrate. You give us your copies, you give us the type of messages that you want to send, and let's do it. So I mean, we tried that algorithm with those guys for like 2 months, and it turned out that it performed pretty well, and it was generating us like a lot of revenue, a lot of meetings, and yes, and well, literally it was crazy, because I remember it was one of the craziest stories ever. I remember it was kind of like, I was making like the whole process, because when you talk to the team, you speak with an analyst, right? So
Yep.
I was speaking with an analyst, like going back and forth, like he was. They give you a spreadsheet when you're running that test. They give you an spreadsheet, and every single week you need to fill out. You need to fill the data, right? Like, hey, we have, I don't
Oof.
know, 10 meetings. We closed this amount of deals, and you just need to fill that data in a spreadsheet. So we were like filling that information, and I remember like one day, literally, this analyst, his name is Ricardo, he sent me an email like, "Hey, the managing partner wants to meet you," and I was like, "Wow, cool!" And like, I didn't literally, I wasn't expecting nothing at all from them, because, to be honest, when they first told me the model, it didn't make any sense to me. Like, I thought like these guys are, I don't know, scammers, like what are they talking about? So basically, I jump in the call with the managing partner. I didn't met the guy. First time, literally first time in my life that I was meeting the managing partner. And I jump into the call, and I was like, "Hey, how are you?" And "Hello, my name is Ropu. I'm the managing partner. Hey, pleasure to meet you." And he told me, "Hey, are you happy with BDEF?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, you guys are generating me lead." And he told me, "Okay, so yeah, I mean, we're ready to move forward. We're ready to deploy. We want to write a check. We like the numbers, and it's going to be an investment based on data. We basically invest in data. I mean, if you can show us that you can get leads and you can get sales, we're in. And I was like, wow, what? And I couldn't believe it. And I remember those were kind of like dark times for us, because we were trying to fundraise so hard. And we were getting a lot of no's, and it was very very hard. And I remember that BDF and Expert Dojo were one of the first VCs that decided to bet on us, and go and say like, hey, we believe in these guys, and that's why I love them. So they literally, they were the first two investors of the round. And then the rest follow. I mean, I love all my investors, by the way. But these obviously were the two
The
first
early
ones.
ones matter for
Yeah, they,
sure,
they were the
100%.
ones that wrote the first check for us, and that's special, man. Because like, when you're fundraising, it's very very hard to get that first check a lot of times. So yeah, shout out to BDF and Expert Dojo for all the help, and yes.
I love it. You know, it's yeah, 100%. I love that investor story. Were you doing anything specific? Like I was going to ask, like, what did you do to cultivate these investors? But it's fascinating, at least with BDev, you just got results. Like that's part of the model I love that they have, right? Like you hustled when they were sending you leads, you're following up, you're closing them. Like sometimes it's the execution that matters. I find, I mean, not sometimes, so often with these VC firms these days, they want to see people who can go out and execute. And that's part of what I love about the BDev model is they kind of even set you up to execute, and they know if they can help you or not. Like, can they be useful to you or not? Is fascinating. So super
Yes,
cool story. I do love that story.
yes. And I mean, I also remember like how we got to Expert Dojo. It's also that story is crazy. Um, I was like working hard, trying to reach as many investors as I could. And I remember I was working on a Saturday in my apartment in Mexico City. And I was working on a Saturday. I remember that day like so well. It was like Saturday, like 10 a.m. I was working, and I found a website that it's called like Rebel One, something like that. It's kind of like a marketplace where you can connect with investors. So basically, you upload your deck, and if the investor likes it, it's gonna be kind of like a match. It's kind of like a Tinder, but for investors and startups. I don't know how that marketplace doing right now, but I it was just part of the grind, man. Like I was just like exploring through the internet. Like literally, it was myself going into Google and putting like B2B investors, or B2B investors in Latam, or B2B investors from the US that invest in Latam. That was my search.
Yep.
So I find out this marketplace, and I click that marketplace, and I was just shooting everywhere. And I thought like, hey, I'm gonna upload my information. So I upload my deck, my information about us, and after 1 week maybe, like Rebel once sent me like an email like, hey, you've got one connection, and I was like, cool. And it was Expert Dojo, and
That's
it was
awesome.
this guy Jonathan, and yeah, man, he basically like told me, hey, are you in for a meeting? And I was like, yeah, I'm in for a meeting, let's do it, and I remember we scheduled a meeting that week as I was in Miami Tech Week fundraising. But I remember that I was like so energized because that week of Miami was amazing. The events, the people, it's Miami, the Bitcoin vibe, but I was like, and I entered to the meeting and I was like, Jonathan, I'm in Miami. I've spoken with a lot of investors, so somehow I like put a lot of FOMO, like I send that FOMO of like fear of missing out, like
Of course.
and the guy, I think the guy felt the vibe, and he told me like, hey, I would like you to meet Brian. And we had the meeting with Brian, and basically Brian told me like right away, hey, I'm willing to invest. Literally, he sent me a term sheet. But could you believe that when he sent me a term sheet, I spoke with my co-founders, and we were not sure if we accepted, if we if it was a good idea to accept the terms from Expert Dojo, because we didn't knew what Expert Dojo was, and
Yep.
we were like, what, who are these guys? We're gonna accept the money from like random strangers that ask you for a little bit more of equity, because like it's an accelerator, right? You're there, they
Yep.
don't invest like in the terms you ask. But we're like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And we are going back and forth. And I remember it was Saturday, and Brian was sending me text messages like, dude, are you in or not? Like literally, are you in or not? Are you willing to accept my money on a Saturday? And I was with my phone, and we ended up accepting the cash from them. But it was literally, I would say, it was the best decision that we've ever made since, or top three decisions that we've ever made since we started Ebombo.
I love hearing it. It's hilarious. And you brought up one thing because you're like you mentioned something that I find really interesting. You mentioned you were looking for investors who invest in Latin America, right? And one of the fun things about the dojo is just all the different companies that come through from all over the world. Like one of
Yes.
the things that I get to talk to these companies who aren't necessarily traditionally Silicon Valley startup worthy, right? Like they don't necessarily they go to the standard VC firms and they're not getting funded, but there are other VC firms out there like BDev and Dojo and these who are looking for, the non-standard company. They're not necessarily looking for the Stanford PhD grads that are just starting the XYZ startup, right? Like I find that really fascinating. And, I'll put a plug for some future episodes. Next week, we're going to have Tobago from Akiba. She's out of South Africa. And then I have Rushab coming in, who's a wonderful guy here in the
Yes,
US.
the
The
guy,
week
that guy's
after,
legit. I know Rushap.
honestly, the Akiba team is fascinating too. They are just on fire in what they're doing in South Africa.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
it's fun that I get to just bring these people on. So, the first couple of weeks I had these Spinnio stories. I was doing some other people from the industry. I had Nick from Cleverly on, and they're great, like more of a supplier and startup. Like they help startups. Lisa Ferris, she was doing stuff that she's just been in. She's an entrepreneur in residence at LMU and kind of knows the startup community. But for the near future here, I want to dive in and just be talking with startup founders like yourself. So for others
Thank you.
interested in these Spinnio stories, like keep coming back. If you hear of other people, by the way, that you think would be, have a good growth story to tell, let them connect them up with me because
Yes,
we've
of
got
course.
some great people on the radar here, but there's always more of that for the future. So
Yes.
um, I love it. So, well, thank you so much for joining me here today.
No, it's been a pleasure, Dustin. It's been a good one, and yeah, I mean, looking forward to meeting you again in Santa Monica. Hopefully, I can be there in the next couple of months. We have some great investors in LA that are based in LA. Actually, it's surprising. I like when I started Ebombo, I would never thought that the startup community in LA was like so active, but you have some great VCs, some great founders. But yes, I mean, shout out to that city as well. You know what a city, man.
LA
What
is
a
a
city.
fun city. There's so much going on, and like you said, our setup here in Santa Monica is it's pretty darn special. So we love having you here anytime you want. It's
Thank
not
you,
that far
appreciate
of
it.
a flight from Mexico City, so
No, it's
just
like a
just
2 hour
make it.
flight.
You don't need much of an excuse. Just come on up sometime. We love having you over, and we'll
Thank you, thank
definitely
you.
go have another happy
Appreciate
hour
it.
when you're here
And
and everything else. So
I've enjoyed this one. So thank you very much for having me again. And yeah, I'll stay in touch. I'll make sure to keep working hard. Work hard to put Latam on the map, Peru on the map, Mexico on the map. So let's go. It's game
I
time.
love it. I love it. Keep rocking it. I love what you're doing, and definitely look forward to continuing to follow the Ebombo story here. So thanks so much for joining me, and
Have a good one,
thanks for everyone
Dustin.
else who joined. And we will be back more with next week. Thanks
Bye
again,
bye.
Mateo.
Have a good
Bye.
one. Okay.